Welcome to our next Bible class where we're going over the Sunday school lessons. Today we're going to be looking at Gideon. So we've gone forward a little bit. We've gone all the way through the book of Joshua, and we got to the book of Judges. So after Joshua was the leader of Israel, he's this really great military leader, but everyone kind of sets up in their own tribal land. The 12 tribes all split up all over the place. And from that point on, everyone just kind of has their own area, an own leader, and they kind of get stuck in their own little lives. And what happens is from time to time, the people, because they didn't drive all the people out of the land that they should have, they didn't drive out the Canaanites completely, and they didn't drive out the Amorites, and they didn't drive out the Midianites, and they didn't drive out all these people completely from their land. These people started to drift back into their culture. And as they drifted back into their culture, so also their customs and their worshiping of false gods continued to drift back into the culture. And when that happened, after a few generations, what happens is it starts mixing together. And soon people can't tell the difference between what is actually, worshiping the one true God and worshiping Ashtoreth or Baal. Okay, they're all kind of intertwined together for the people that are not priests. It's just your common person. Because Yahweh, the God of the Bible, the God that brought them out of the Egypt, just becomes another God. Just becomes the God of Israel. But all the rest of the gods, that's the God of the Philistines, that's Marduk, that's the God of the Phoenicians, that's the God over there. And everyone's got a God, and we all worship them in different ways. It's wrong. There's only one true God. So what happened inevitably is that people would worship a false god, start worshiping a false god, and then all of a sudden when people start walking away from God, other people, and God is not fighting for them anymore, these other people start to take advantage of the Israelites, and time after time after time again, they start to conquer them. And once the Israelites realize that they have sinned, realize that they have turned away from the one true God, and they've been worshiping false idols, and they've been doing things that are detestable to the Lord, when they come back to Him and say, God, we're sorry, we've made mistakes, you are the one true God, please forgive us. Then what happens through this period of the Bible is God would send judges. And these judges, in the Hebrew, like judge, justice, are all kind of the same thing mixed together. And basically what it means is it's a leader for a short period of time. Okay? So it's not like any of these people were elected to these positions where it's like, okay, well, we need a judge to rescue us. Is anyone around here that wants to be the next judge? No. In these cases, God is in a special way giving someone the ability to do something incredible and help the Israelites be free. And it's very clear that the hand of God is there. I think in the next couple of weeks we're going to talk about Samson. Incredible strength of Samson and what he does to the Philistines. Now, Gideon is one that we skip over from time to time. There are 12 judges listed in Judges, and, probably mostly talk about Samson. From time to time we probably talk about Deborah too, the only female judge that was there. And Gideon, I think he's mentioned, but just one of those characters in the Bible, historical figures that sometimes we skip over, and it's amazing. It's just a wonderful lesson for us in Judges chapters 6 through 9. If you're looking for a book of the Bible to read in the Old Testament, go back and read Judges. Awesome narrative book that you're going to just read about the awesome power of God and what He is able to do. But anyway, it is a lot to read, so I'm not going to read everything word for word for you today. I'm just going to kind of go through and tell you the story of Gideon and kind of make some comments along the way. So, what happened was, chapter 6 started off with, again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years He gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Okay? That's the pattern. People did evil, turned away from God, God said, I'm going to punish you by sending a foreign nation upon you. And that happened, right? They came up, verse 5, they came up like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count all their men and camels because they invaded the land and ravaged it. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. So finally, after 7 years, the invasion was so bad that they were a second-rate nation in their own promised land that God had given to them. And they cry out to the Lord for help, and he helps them. And this is the way how. This is how he calls Gideon. So we go to verse 11. The angel of the Lord came down and sat under the oak tree of Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite. Abiezrite. Okay? What happens is when we have a word in Hebrew, we just take the word in Hebrew and we give it English letters, especially for names of people. So sometimes it's difficult to say. Just go with it. If you don't know the name of somebody, you can see even I as a pastor sometimes have a hard time putting these together. Abiezr. I mean, that's not something that usually we put those letters together. But anyway, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. So he's got wheat, right? He's had this wheat and he harvested it, and now he's sneaking it away and making it in a winepress so that at the time of the harvest for wheat, you're not going to have the Midianites come in and go, hey, okay, now that you've threshed all the wheat, now that you've got all the chaff blown away, just give us some of that fine flour. I was trying to sneak it away, putting it in the winepress. But the Lord appears to him, and the angel of the Lord appears to him, and Gideon doesn't realize it's the Lord. Kind of like when the Lord appeared to Abraham, right, at the tents. Abraham sees 3 men walking towards him. He knows this is someone special, but, doesn't come right out and say this is the Lord. Now Gideon, he's working hard, so he just kind of sees this guy, and he says, hey, how you doing? The Lord is with you. And the angel says, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. And Gideon replies, he says, but sir, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened? We're all his wonders that our fathers told us about when they said, did the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and put us into the hand of Midian. Which, is a question a lot of people have. If God is with us, who can be against us? Well, those people are against us. The Midianites are against us. There are people in this world that do not like Christianity that are against us. There are plenty of people against us, Lord. That's not what that means, right? It's not that people won't hate you because of the Lord, which is what Jesus says. The world will hate you because of me. It's just that no one will be able to stand up to the strength of the Lord. Because you're on the winning team, you are going to overcome anyone that is against you and against the God of the universe, the only true God, the God of the Bible. So, keeps going. The Lord turned and said to him, go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Okay, now Gideon's got to realize this is someone important, right? Because he is saying, I'm sending you on a mission to go save Israel, and I'm sending you. I am. Okay? That's what Moses was told the name of the Lord is. I am, right? Am I not sending you? But Lord, Gideon replied, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. So of the totem pole, right? You think of how powerful some people are. You got Judah, right? The tribe of Judah, and even the tribe of Benjamin, right? And you go through all these different things. And you get to find to the last ones, you get to Manasseh and Ephraim. The split tribes that go to the sons of Joseph. So Joseph was an important son, right? Obviously, he's the one that saved everyone from Egypt with the great famine. But, not even one of the original 12 brothers, another generation down. And he's the least of that family and the least of that clan. And he thinks, of all of the people of status of these 12 tribes, why would anyone rally around me? I'm not the one that should be calling this together. Go get someone from the tribe of Judah to call this out." The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together." Gideon replied, "If I have now found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it's really you. Please do not go away until I come back and bring you my offering and set it before you." Now Gideon's going to ask for 3 signs from the Lord. And actually the Lord will give him 4 signs. Later on he'll give him another one. But the first sign is Gideon makes this big feast to the Lord, right? He makes a young goat, and he makes some broth, and he makes all these things. And the Lord says, "Hey, put it right here on this rock and pour the broth over it." And he does it, and as soon as that happens, the rock and everything starts on fire, and everything goes up into the air. Okay? The whole thing burns up. And then the Lord is disappearing. And as soon as the Lord disappears there, Gideon realizes that he wasn't just talking to somebody who had come out that was just a prophet, right? That it was literally the Lord who was in front of him. And he falls down on his face because he feels like that I have seen the Lord, right? When Gideon, verse 22, when Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he exclaimed, "Ah, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the Lord said to him, after he had already disappeared, right? "Peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die." And right there, what does Gideon do? He builds an altar to the Lord and worships him. That's what we do. We worship our God, praising him. So that same night, the Lord said to him, comes back to him in some way. We don't know if it's the angel of the Lord or just a voice talking to him or through a dream. But he says, "Take a second bull from your father's herd, the one that's 7 years old. Tear down your father's altar to Baal. Cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Then build a proper kind of altar to the Lord your God on top of its height. Using the wood of the Asherah pole that you cut down, offer the second bull as a burnt offering." So it's not that worship of false gods was around the Israelites. Every once in a while they, went in and worshiped there. Gideon's father had his own altar to Baal and had his own Asherah pole, right? Worshiping 2 separate false gods of that land. His dad had an altar to them. Now, he might have had an altar to the Lord, his God, but it wasn't a proper one, right? It was just one of the many. So they say to Gideon, "Gideon, I want you to go out and I want you to destroy those things." And he does. He went out, but he was afraid. He was afraid to do it in the middle of the day, so he goes out at night and he tears down the altar, and he tears down the Asherah pole, and he builds an altar to the Lord, and everyone wakes up the next morning, verse 29, and says, "Who did this?" And then realize it was Gideon. So the men of the town, they're upset, right? "You tore down our altars to these gods." They're upset because, well, they think they might have to rebuild them. But on top of that, they think Baal's going to be mad, right? Baal's going to do something to punish him, and maybe he's going to punish us. Maybe he's not going to send rain on our land for a number of years. Maybe he's not going to protect us when the Midianites come in. Maybe some of our people are going to be sick. We don't want to anger the gods by destroying their temple. What should we do? This is where Gideon's father steps in. Even though he has his own altar to Baal, he says this, "Are you going to plead for Baal's cause? Are you trying to save him? Whoever fights for him shall be put to death by morning. But if Baal is really a god, he can defend himself when someone breaks down his altar." So that day, they called Gideon Jerubbaal. Okay? Give him this name, which is, "Let Baal contend for himself." Let Baal fight against him. Let this God destroy that guy that broke down our altar. It's a brilliant move by Joash, right? If this God is real, why don't you have him fight for himself? Why do you have to fight for him? And it's something, and that's what Joash says about a false god. Now, if somebody hurt our church, I would do whatever we can, to hold them liable through the courts and the proceedings that we have here in our country. But, if there's someone that's just being disparaging to the gospel, and just heckling you or saying something nasty to you, you can just say, well, you know what? The Lord will deal with you. Let the Lord contend for himself. And at a certain point, you just say, the Lord will have his will be done. And, there are times when you just let the Lord fight. Just be still and know that he is God. He's on your side, and he's going to fight for you. So, next. Gideon follows the plan of the Lord and is going to go fight against the Midianites, right? So he sends a message to all the 12, or to the tribes that are out there, trying to get people to come to him. So he sends them out to Manasseh and to Asher and to Zebulun and to Naphtali. So not all the tribes, but kind of all the tribes that are up north where he's at, where the Midianites were invading, near the Sea of Galilee kind of area. And they come out to meet him, right? And he talks to them. And at this time, he's still a little bit worried that this is going to work, okay? Because the Midianites have a lot of people. At a later point, we're going to find out they have like 120,000 men that are fighting for them, and Gideon does not have that many. Even all the fighting men that are around in those northern tribes, they've already been conquered. So it's not like, they had the power to overthrow the Midianites, but they're just lazy or bored. They were the underdogs to start from. But Midian, so asked the Lord again, right? Lord, can you give me a sign? And I know you gave me that sign with all the food burning up on the rock when your staff touched it. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. But give me another sign. And what he does is one night he lays, right, the fleece of a sheep on the ground in front of him, on the threshing floor. And as he lays it on the ground, he says, Lord, the next morning when all the dew falls, have this be wet and all the ground around it be dry. And the next morning Gideon wakes up and the fleece is wet and all the ground around it is dry, and he squeezes it out and it's a whole bowl full of water. So it's not like there's a couple of specks of dew, or it's like, is this damp? Does this feel damp to you? Calls his wife, does this feel wet? No, it's wet. Okay, it's a whole bowl full of water comes out of this. Then he asks the Lord for another sign. He says, Lord, do the opposite, okay? Next morning when I wake up, have all the ground be wet and have this be dry. And the next morning he wakes up and that's how it is. Okay? So this is the Lord doing his work, not just some random natural phenomena that happens. No, this is the Lord showing his sign. So, wakes up the next morning, and Gideon gets up and he comes to the spring and he gets everyone together, and the Lord looks at the army that has assembled there, and he says, you got too many men. I don't need all these guys. I don't need all these guys to fight for me. So he tells Gideon, hey, go forward and just say, anyone that trembles, right? Anyone that's scared to fight, anyone that really doesn't want to be here, you guys can go home. And there's a reason for this, right? Verse 2, the Lord says, you have too many men for me to deliver Midian into their hands. In order that Israel may not boast against me, that her own strength has saved her, announce now to the people, anyone that's scared can go back. The Lord wants everyone to know this is his doing. This is not, Midian was a great warrior, or this guy was a great adventurer, or this guy did it, or the tribe of Naphtali came through in the clutch, or, Zebulun had this great idea to flank from one side, and it all worked out. Now this is just the Lord doing all of this. So, 22,000 men left, while 10,000 remained. So we cut everything right, basically 2/3 of the army. 70%, 66% just go home. Go home, 10,000 is fine. But then the Lord says to Gideon again, there's still too many men. I want you to go down to the river, and I will sift through them there, and say, this one shall go with you, he shall go, but if I say, this one shall not go with you, he will not. So Gideon took him down to the water, and this is how the Lord separated between the two, right? Those who lap up the water with their tongues like a dog from those who kneel down to drink. So he takes them down a river and says, hey, everybody go get a drink. And if people went on their hands and knees and just started drinking out of a river like this, or if they bent down and took water in their hand and brought it up to their mouth and drank it, he separates them that way. And he says, with the 300 men that lapped, okay, like a dog, right, from the ground, those I will save you with. Let all the other men go to his place. Now this is significant too. You're just like, okay, well, there's two ways to drink. Why did only 300 drinks that way? With their mouth to the water. But you think about it, man, if you're a warrior, how are you supposed to drink water? You're supposed to keep your eyes up at all times, checking out your surroundings. If your face is in the water and you're drinking and you're laying on your stomach, you're in a pretty vulnerable position. You're not a very good warrior. Okay? Versus if you're the guy that goes down and picks it up with his hand, he's on his knees, he can get to his weapon real quick, he can do what he needs to do, that's a better warrior. But the Lord, out of the 10,000 men, okay, he's got the 10,000 they want to fight at least, but there are 300 that really don't know how to fight very well, or at least they're not thinking about being a warrior very much, because they didn't do the same as 9,700 other guys did that were better fighters than they. So he takes the 300 untrained men, or less trained men, and he says, go down, I want you to go to the camp where all the Midianites are hanging out. And he knows at this point Gideon's going to be a little bit afraid, okay? Because he probably knows what it's like, to be a good warrior. He probably knows that those guys with their faces in the water were probably not the best fighters that were out there. He realizes they has 300 men against a huge camp of people. I think it's like 10,000 people that are around there, okay? And this is not 300, right? This is Sparta. And then they have like a perfect corridor where everyone's going to come through and they're bottlenecking them and they can fight them and go into their, Roman, whatever, turtle shell formation and fight back. No, these are just some guys out there with some swords and spears, okay? Later on, and they're not even that well equipped to make swords and spears. A couple hundred years, when you get farther on, I think the Philistines are going to wipe out all the blacksmiths because they don't even want the Israelites to make any weapons. So they are not technologically advanced at all. I mean, the last military battle, like real big one, right? You think of Jericho, what'd they win that with? They won it with trumpets. Okay, so not the greatest of fighters that are out there. During the night, they go down. He tells Gideon, go down, and he listens, and he hears a couple of guys that are in the camp talking about how they see this loaf of bread, right? A loaf of bread tumbling down into the Midian camp. It struck the tent with such force that the tent overturned and collapsed. And his friend said, this can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash the Israelite. God has given the whole the Midianites and the whole camp into his hand. This is what Gideon overhears when he sneaks down to spy on the people. He sneaks down, and the one conversation he hears is a guy who had a dream about a piece of bread, right? A piece of bread. You look at a piece of bread, how much of a weapon do you think that is? Okay? Someone has a loaf of bread on the table. You're not going to say, whoa, sir. I thought we were having dinner here. It's not a weapon, right? But so to have a dream about a loaf of bread coming down a hill to knock over a tent, that's a pretty strange dream. And then somehow the other guy interprets it and going, you know what? A loaf of bread knocking over a tent, it's got to mean that Gideon, son of Joash, has God on his side and he's going to destroy us. I mean, what a jump. But it's not, because it's the Holy Spirit prophesying through these two people, through a dream and the interpretation. So Gideon hears this, he goes back and he says, okay, we're going to do this. Now he is 100% confident that the God is on his side. Tells all his men, hey, everybody get up. We're going to divide. We're going to, 300 men, we're going to do 3 different sets of 100. They're going to line up all the way around. They got trumpets in one hand and jars in the other with torches inside. So again, right, what are they fighting with? They're fighting with jars and trumpets. They have weapons too, but 17 of chapter 7. He says, watch me, follow my lead. We'll get to the edge of the camp, do exactly what I do. And they get there and they're all in the middle of the night while everyone's sleeping. They wait for the guard just to change. So it's like 2 o'clock. Everyone is completely asleep. And they stand up. And verse 20, the 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars. And grasping the torches in their left hand and holding in their right hands the trumpet, they were to blow, and they shouted, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. And each man held his position around the camp. And all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. So you wake up and you hear this charge, trumpet blast. Everybody, 300 trumpeters that are out there. It's a huge trumpet noise. It's completely surrounding you. And you think, if they got 300 trumpets, I wonder how many troops they have. And then you hear jars smashing, right? They're here. It's not that they're a long ways off. They're in the hills. It's going to be a long time until they get here. No, jars are smashing. They're right on top of us. There's so many trumpets. It's so loud. They got to be here. You look up. You see torches in every direction, and they just start running. They got no battle plan. They take off, right? When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The army fled to Bethshittah toward Zerah, as far as the border of Abel Meholah near Tabbath. Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. So there's so much confusion, and they got their swords, and they just woke up, and they don't really know what's going on, and the Lord throws them into confusion on top of this, and they start just attacking each other. And they take off running, and they're just running, and they're like, okay, they're going to catch up with us. We got to keep going. Stick together. Hey, come over here. Let's go as a group. Let's get back to our land. And they keep going, and they're running down the Jordan River. And they send ahead a messenger to those 3 other people, to those other, what would they be? I mean, like 31,700 troops that got sent home, and says to them, hey, you guys, there's going to be some people running by that are scared out of their minds, that are not in any kind of formation that the Lord has given into our hands. Go out and strike them down. So they did. They went out. They struck them down. All the men of Ephraim called out the waters. They captured the Midian leaders, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at a place called the Rock of Oreb, and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. Pursued the Midianites. Eventually they catch up with 2 other leaders named Zeba and Zalmunna. And this is kind of an interesting thing. They go through these towns with the 300 men still, and they ask for some bread, because they've been on the run pursuing these people for a very long time. And there's these 2 towns, and both of them say, if you don't have those leaders, we're really not going to help you out. If you bring back those leaders, we'll do something about it. And eventually Gideon does get the people, and he does bring them back, and he kills these leaders, and then he punishes those towns. He doesn't put them to death, but he says he punishes them with briars and thorns. So I don't know if he gave them a flogging or something. But anyway, so he does this, and he's victorious. He's beaten the entire Midianite army with 300 men. And the people for this, they want to make him the king, right? They say, well, this is great. This guy is really a leader. When we didn't have a king, all these countries were just able to come in and overthrow us. But if we had a king, it could be like, hey, Naphtali, hey, Zebulun, hey, Asher, hey, Judah, everyone, let's come together. Let's go fight against these Midianites. This won't happen again. And Gideon responds to that, and he says, no, I'm not going to be your king. Because they say, rule over us, you and your son and your grandson, because you have saved us. Gideon told them, I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. So, Gideon, right? The Lord is your God. The Lord is your king. We are a theocracy, not a democracy, not a monarchy. The Lord is our king. He's the one that won this battle, not me. I mean, did you hear that I beat that army with jars and trumpets? Okay? That's what we won with. This is not me doing it. This is the Lord who's given me these signs over and over again that he is with me. I'm not going to do it. Don't you dare do that to my son later on. We're not going to have a king. But he does say, everybody just, give me a little bit of gold, an earring from the people that were out there. He collects them all together. He makes an ephod, right, which is this like fancy thing that goes over the chest of a priest, right, so that possibly for a temple, right, for a high priest. And unfortunately, the people start worshiping that rather than the one true God, having superstition about it. But anyway, Gideon goes back home, and he has many, many children, and he dies. Okay, so he has 70 children. And one more kind of thing about Gideon, which is just kind of amazing. He ends up having 70 children, and one of his children is named Abimelech. Okay, Abimelech. And he has a son named Abimelech, and he decides that, you know what? There's 70 brothers here that everyone kind of looks up to as leaders, and I think it would be better if I was in charge. Yeah, I think it would be better if I was in charge and not everyone else. So, he gets some people on his side, right? He goes out and goes to the city of Shechem, right? And goes there and he kills his 70 brothers. 70 brothers along with this city. And he decides that he is going to be the king. One of his brothers, though, escaped. Okay, this child named Jotham. Okay, and he escapes. And he has this little parable here in Judges chapter 9 that is just incredible, and I think it applies to a lot of different places. I'm just going to read it, and I'm not going to comment on it, because it really is not about anything that's out there politically at this time, but I think it's just, it's a saying on many different powers that are throughout this world, that come to a position of power in this world. Not necessarily in the United States, but just everywhere. All right? So, verse 7. When Jotham was told about this, he climbed on to the top of Mount Gerizim, and he shouted to them, "Listen to me, citizens of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. One day the trees went out to anoint a king for themselves. They said to the olive tree, 'Be our king.' But the olive tree answered, 'Should I give up my oil, by which both gods and men are honored, to hold sway over the trees? No.' Next, the trees said to the fig tree, 'Come and be our king.' But the fig tree replied, 'Should I give up my fruit, so good and sweet, to hold sway and to rule over these trees?' Obviously not, right? Then the trees said to the vine, right? Well, it's not quite a tree, but it's a vine at least, okay? It's green sometimes. 'Come and be our king.' But the vine answered, 'Should I give up my wine, which cheers both gods and men, to hold sway over the trees?' Finally, obviously the vine's not going to do it. Finally, all the trees said to the thorn bush, Come and be our king. The thorn bush said to the trees, if you really want to anoint me king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, then let fire come out of the thorn bush and consume the cedars of Lebanon. Shouldn't have asked the thorn bush to be king. Okay, if all the good people refuse to be your king, you don't need to go to the thorn bush. The thorn bush that does not have shade. You ever seen a thorn bush? It's not too shady. It just is thorns. It's just going to hurt you. And it says, if you're not going to make me king, fire's going to come out and consume you. So I'm not going to give this up easily. The people that are pursuing power, Abimelech, who is pursuing power, who went to these people and said, hey, wouldn't it be great to make me king? I know you went to Gideon and you said, make me king, and you said, nah. I know you've probably gone to some other people that were great and said, you want to be king? And they said, no, I got other things going on in my life. We got a good thing going. We don't need to do it. But you picked Abimelech. You picked this guy that killed his 70 brothers. He's not a man following after God. He's not the person you want to be your leader. And for that, the people suffer. Soon after Gideon, even though Gideon ruled for 40 years in a time of peace, after that, soon afterwards, the people just fall right back to the place where they started. Right back to the beginning of chapter 6, right when we hear, again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. It happens so quickly afterwards. Then we're going to some other judges. Anyway, go read it for yourself. I gave you a lot of spoilers. If you have any questions, please reach out. Feel free to contact me. But thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Word of God with me. Have a good day.